that fulfillment you get at the end of the day when you know you've done things. Because most of us just wake up and we look at our calendars and we go and do our meetings. When we have a free break, we don't know what we're going to do with it, but we go and eat and do something else random. I literally sit down and I have a diary where I write down at least 10 tasks that I need to do during that day. And they need to be diverse tasks. So diverse, Sam, that I actually diarize that I need to take my dog for a walk. And there's 2 walks, and I tick it twice, and I diarize that I need to feed her. But I also diarize that I need to feed myself. And then on top of that, I diarize the time I need to spend on my own personal things for work and the time I need to spend on my work things for my traditional employment. So for me, that's how I've actually approached it. And I found that, with COVID being at home, I've literally got so much time. I don't have that wasted time of waking up in the morning, taking a shower, putting on a suit and putting on a tie and looking extremely smart to get into work and walk into the wealth space at Standard Bank where everybody looks suave. Now I wake up, I take a shower, I meditate a bit, and then I sit down and look at my day. And any spare time I have, I push that towards my side hustle, especially after I realized once it started working how much I'd lose out on if I stopped putting that time towards that. And it happens quite naturally as you start a business. Once you see the benefits, you start realizing that, you can't live without it. So those are some of the practical steps I've taken, yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tshume. And I really love that approach. I think a lot of the times, because we're so stuck in our 9-to-5s, and a lot of us do take our 9-to-5s home, even if it's just in our heads, and COVID definitely helped us sort of get a new perspective on where our time goes. But I also suppose, as somebody who's pretty much always existed as a person who's had more than one job since I started working. It's something natural for me, It's sort of like there's a restlessness when I don't have a second job because, I feel like there's time that's going into a vacuum. So it's really great to sort of hear that, this is something that's quite manageable. But I suppose another reality, is the fact that you've already touched on unemployment stats and things like that. So sometimes the idea of even getting a second job is something that's so far out, and people can't really think outside the box. To be able to say, where can I go? Because you're just looking at what's in front of you, and you're thinking, there's no way I could do my 9-to-5 and this. But I suppose the one thing certainly that I learned in my experience is sometimes putting yourself out there, the opportunities tend to gravitate towards you. And I was wondering, was that the same experience? You're sort of out there and the opportunities sort of, I don't want to say they land in your lap. I don't think that's a very accurate way, because I've waited tables, I've worked part-time in a bookstore, and those opportunities don't come to me. I go out for them.
True. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, same here. I worked the whole way through medical school, even with my parents telling me I don't have to. I mean, I waited tables for the first 3 years of medical school, and ultimately waiting those tables, an opportunity did fall on my lap. I waited a table for a group of guys, and they actually owned a video shop. It was called V's Video Services. I think there was a whole chain of them throughout South Africa, and I ended up managing a video shop in the complex where I stayed during varsity. And I think from that whole experience, once I started working as a doctor, when I graduated as a doctor and I became an intern and a community service doctor, I was already doing locums because I was used to doing more than one job. So I think it definitely is putting yourself out there. And once you get into the sort of the vibe of it all, things do approach you, and I think things approach everybody. It's just that with us, we're more open and we're more aware of them approaching us, and we're more open to taking the chances than most people do. Because if you think about it, I'm sure lots of people on this course sitting down right now, they do have a passion for something outside of what they do. They probably do know someone who's doing that thing, or they could potentially get involved in something like that. But because they don't see it as an opportunity and they see it as this other side thing that might take away their time, they're not open to it. Whereas you and I, we've been been hustling for years. So when I was working at the bank and a group of doctors approached me and said, listen, let's open up a medical service for mobile doctors and let's get this thing done, I instantly clicked. I didn't sit there and go, oh no, I won't be able to do this at work. I knew that you can have side hustles at work as long as you declare it, and I immediately jumped onto it, and now it's a running business. So for me, I think it's not it falling on your lap. I think we all get those opportunities, but I think some of us are a lot more tuned into the space and we're a lot more open to them than most people, and hence they tend to seem as if they fall into our laps.
Absolutely.
So, Doc, you just revealed your age, right? When you said your first side hustle was managing a video store. You know, we've got some people on the space who've never been a video cassette. You know? we know where to put you now.
I'm still a millennial. Come on.
Just pulling your leg, Doc. So, I mean, obviously, what you have been discussing, right? And what I'm thinking there had to be a huge learning curve, right? You know, the first learning curve is learning how to take care of your personal finance. And the second learning curve is learning about a different industry. As you've said, you know, there are a lot of people, you know, on the space where, you know, they're in a particular industry, but they're passionate for another industry. So I want you to take us through kind of your plan and your approach to learning, you know, and I think speak about the learnings that you had to do for your personal finance, because you did say that you were a doctor. You didn't even know that you had to budget, right? And then also, you know, kind of go through, take us through, you know, your learning curve about learning about a different industry and even being able to tap into the opportunities in that industry. Yeah. Like finance, you are from a medical, you know, industry.
Most definitely, and I think one of the things that I have is that I'm an extremely curious person. I always want to know what's happening behind the corner over there, you know, and I think that's basically always taught me to sort of want to learn more. But I mean, quite interestingly, you mentioned the whole medical thing and the fact that I had no financial skills. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm gonna throw it out there to this audience. I know personally, medical doctors, as much as they make money, a lot of them struggle with finances because of a lack of financial knowledge. And I don't blame them, because I mean, we are tasked with learning every single blood vessel, every single nerve, and every single muscle attachment and bone in the body. And that's thousands and thousands of things you need to learn. And we get entrenched in that. So by the time we graduate, we then need to start learning to specialize and even get more away from anything else you need to learn. That when it comes to finances, you want to push that aside. And for me, I mean, the huge curve came in for me in that the first thing is I never knew how to do tax returns. And I didn't actually understand the full implication of tax returns, of exactly how to manage those things. And that's one of the biggest things in wealth generation, is understanding how to stay on top of your tax and keeping in mind that, you know, this interest and income is earned from your investment could be subjected to taxes. But also understanding that certain things you might be able to do or might be able to acquire from a product's point of view will actually allow you to get some money back from that tax. And I mean, I was losing a lot of money not taking advantage of certain tax things. Another thing was I really didn't have a clear appreciation for credit. And it was a big thing. I mean, I used to just swipe at random for any price. And most of them were sort of like, they weren't grudge purchases, but they weren't thought out properly. I would come out of a call, I'd be very irritated and tired. I haven't slept for 36 hours. And I'd find myself in Sandton and I'd go shopping for clothes. And most of the clothes I never even wore. And eventually one day, you know, I was sitting down. I eventually sat down with a financial advisor and had the conversation with them, and you know, and I found all the pitfalls that I'd made throughout the years, all the money that I'd lost out on, all the money that I'd wasted, and just the mere fact that when he asked me, "Do you know what you're spending every month?" and I didn't, that was extremely embarrassing for me, and I think it's something that it should be embarrassing to everybody. You work so hard, you wake up in the morning, you go and you work and you plow. You even don't see your friends and family because you're working. And you're working for a paycheck. Yet you don't even know how you're using that paycheck. So that really hurt me. I sat there and I was like, wow. You know, I've been doing these calls, I've been operating, I've been giving my life, I've been driving to Barra and Joburg Gen at 1 o'clock in the morning to see patients. All of that stuff is worth nothing because I actually didn't even use the rewards from them appropriately. And then I think, so that brought about this passion for me of being extremely inquisitive about finances, speaking to as many people as possible, utilizing platforms. I mean, the one beautiful thing is I mentioned a platform called Shift. And the beauty with Shift is that it's got an inbuilt capability where they actually do the research for you and they educate you on what stocks to look for. Isn't that absolutely amazing? I mean, you've got a teacher on an app where you can trade stocks and buy foreign currencies. And people don't realize that these apps have that capability. You don't need to know it all, but you can also learn while you're doing it. And then when it came to my profession, Sam, I mean, that's quite straightforward. I took a plunge because I knew that this could possibly bring me a lot more rewards and give me the life that I want to live, being in corporate. Then once I got into corporate, I had to learn because I wasn't a finance graduate. I didn't start off as a junior manager or an intern in corporate. I went in straight into senior positions. I had teams that I was managing. I mean, in my previous role, I managed a team of 8 actuaries. And can you imagine actuaries looking at a doctor as their new head of department? I had to become extremely passionate about learning all the things that I'd missed out on. And then on top of that, one of the things that drives my hunger for learning new things, Sam and Dineo, is I'm sure you guys can agree with me, and especially since I showed my age. If you take it back 15 years ago, and you think of the changes that used to happen in a 12-month period, and then you compare that to right now, and the changes that we expect in 12 months, they've grown exponentially. The world changes more in 1 month than it did in 5 years back then. And just because of that, it means that we as professionals and we as individuals and human beings, we need to be constantly learning and evolving in order to stay future fit. We're talking about being finance fit, and finance fit is one of the things of being future